Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome. It's been a while. One of those rare node investor live streams, rarer than the most rarest NFT in the market today. We'll get started in a minute here. Going to be looking at the charts, looking at the big cap names, the DeFi names, and anything else you guys want to look at. It's going to just be a chart view, see what I think is going to happen, and we'll go from there. Let me post a quick update here on the Twitter sphere and some of this other stuff. But let's get to it. So, and it looks like my thumbnail didn't update. It's okay. I'll update it later. Not important at the moment. So I hope you guys have been well. I've been doing okay. I've been doing good. Just chilling, mostly limiting my trading, a lot of holding. Definitely keeping an eye on the markets for sure. Like lots of time online, looking at charts, looking at, doing research and Twitter and all that stuff. But doing okay. I'm doing well. I hope you guys are doing good. I appreciate the comments here. Looks like we've got some folks starting to join. And yeah, so like, what was the last stream I did? I think the last stream I did was like lessons from the last bull markets. And there was some good lessons in there. I hope you guys have paid attention, have not over traded, have looked at the longer term view, have not been liquidated because of too much margin. I hope you guys got some value out of that last live stream. Hopefully. It's hard to follow those rules, even myself. The hardest part about trading and investing, hands down, is not the technical jargon or the chart reading or any of that nonsense. It's the psychology. It's the emotions, the roller coaster, all the stuff that comes with that. But many of you guys know that. A lot of you guys have been in this game for a while. I see a lot of new names out there, a lot of new channels popping up. And so, you guys are doing good. You guys are covered. There's a lot of good content out there for sure. So let's get to it here. So looking at the charts here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the big cap names, of course. But in particular, I've got my eye on ETH. And looking at some potential breakouts, looking at some potential reversal / outperformance versus Bitcoin. And if that happens, what does that mean for some of the other alts, in particular the DeFi names? So that's kind of the lens I'm looking at things through right now. But my bigger holdings are still very much in the BTC side of things. I got a ton of other alts, but mostly BTC, probably like 60%. And I'm looking to make a little bit of a rebalance here if things start shaping up. So let's start with the big name first then. Let's look at the Bitcoin chart. I'm going to zoom out. I like zooming out right now because we're in a very strong bull market, and I think it's important to keep the broader trend in mind because there's been a lot of choppiness. We've had some recent pullbacks and all that good stuff. But if you look at the bigger picture, like obviously the trend is still your friend, higher highs, higher lows, but there is a little bit of momentum slowing down. That doesn't mean prices just crash, but what does that mean is maybe we go into a sideways phase, a little bit of a consolidation. Those are the worst because you think things are about to sell, and then you get out of the way, and then they don't sell, and they start to rally, and you think, oh man, here we go, new highs, and then they don't break out, and then they pull back, and then you sell again, and you just get chopped to heck. And so if you're over trading a sideways market, it's probably the most dangerous scenario in terms of like racking out fees and slippage and kind of edging away, death by 1,000 cuts. So we might be entering some of that. And the reason I say that, if you zoom in here first, like this little shaded area was the big breakout over that 41,000 mark, right? That was the last real big consolidation we had right at the start of the year, early January, through that March or February timeframe. But during this period, there was a lot of really good alt trades, right? The DeFi names were just on fire. And so it was kind of nice to see BTC take a break and some of these other names rally, and then obviously we broke out, we retested that zone, and here we are, made new highs here not too recently, just in the last last week or so we made some new highs, and all around the trend is still your friend. The moving averages are still bullishly inverted. The 10 EMA is above the 22, price is trading above both. And it may be hard to see on the screen here, but I've got this dotted line, right? You can see there's a little bit of a trend line starting to form here where there's this rising support. Right now, that's my first kind of line of defense here that I'm watching. If this trend line, which corresponds with these moving averages, starts to take a loss, then I'm looking for a little bit steeper of a correction. Unless, again, we go into that just kind of sideways chop mode, but then in that scenario, I'll like ETH and some of the alts better. I'll get to that in a minute. So the reason I'm looking at this here is if you look at some of the technicals, so like looking at the MACD and the RSI, and let me pull those up here. So looking at it here on the daily chart, you can see that there's a little bit of a bearish divergence starting to form, right? Not huge, but you can see that with each recent high that we've seen here in price, the RSI has not confirmed that. Now the MACD has, but even here recently the MACD is slightly lower, and you also can see that it's a little bit more pronounced on the weekly charts here. And so if you go to the weekly chart, let me clear the arrows so you guys can see that a little bit. The RSI on the weekly chart, a little bit of a divergence, right? The last 3 weeks the RSI is certainly taking a dip as price momentum starts to slow down a little bit. And so with the rising price, you're starting to get a little bit of a pause in the buying pressure, if you will. But all that being said, the bull is very much still in place. The momentum is still much to the upside. You can see that even when we had the big pullback, 3 weeks ago, didn't even touch the 10 EMA on the weekly chart. I mean, all that has just been noise for the most part, right? Which is why when you're in a strong bull market, you want to, Brandon in the house, what's up, buddy? When you're in a strong bull market, you want to zoom out a little bit more than usual, right? Because it's easy to get caught up in all the shaking and all the wiggles when, if you look at the daily and the weeklies, it's like, oh, the trend is your friend, still kind of going up. And unless you're trading and margin and all that stuff, you're just better off just kind of ignoring the noise and staying with the longer trend. And so that being said, trend is still your friend, but I'm looking at this potential slowdown in momentum, seeing the RSI starting to diverge a little bit. And so the kind of first line in the sand for me is right around, call it 54K, in and around there. We start to close below that, then I can see some more downside. Retesting that 50 psychological number, again, would not be surprising. So that's what I'm looking for. But of course, this is just a little bit of a pullback right now. Volume's a little bit lower in the last couple of days, so you could just as easily see another big green candle to the upside and new all-time highs. So not too worried from that perspective just yet. Definitely noting the small divergence. Now, on the Ethereum side of things, if we look at the ETH chart, the most recent consolidation we've seen here, right? So we had the peak in ETH, new all-time highs here over 2K towards the end of February. And we had that steep pullback along with Bitcoin. Since have rallied nicely just below that high, starting to pause, forming a little bit of a cup and handle type of pattern here, which I like to see. What you don't want to see is this handle just get really deep to the downside, because then that'll really start to invalidate it. At that point, it starts to look more double top-ish. But for now, it's a bullish structure. It's consolidating near the highs. It's still above the moving averages. The max that I would want to see if it did pull back further, in my opinion, would probably be around that 1640 mark, in and around there. Definitely above 1600. You don't want to see it get much below that, or it starts to kind of invalidate this bullish pattern. The alternative is, again, we go into this little bit more of a protracted sideways scenario, and in that case, it's not a cup and handle, and it starts to form more of an ascending base. Then you can get a much deeper pullback, but then in that scenario, I'm looking for the consolidation to last much longer, possibly into early April. If that happens, I think that would set up for a much bigger breakout when it ultimately did break out, because that would basically translate into a consolidation on the weekly chart, which we have not seen since basically September. I mean, there's been no consolidation on the weekly chart. This is literally the beginning of what could be that first consolidation after a monster run from $400 up to $2,000 in basically, what, 4 months or whatever it was. So it's like we haven't had that consolidation, which kind of leads me to believe, wouldn't surprise me if we do get something along those lines where it just kind of chops around for a little bit longer. But if Bitcoin holds up, then I wouldn't be surprised to see some of the alts continue to have their day in the sun and party a little bit. But you can see here, this RSI is pulling back a little bit, but again, that's just because the daily has been going sideways since, you know, a couple weeks now, and so no big deal. So those are the two scenarios I'm looking for here. Of course, if it starts to really pull back, first defense here is 1600, and then of course, you know, that 1400 is a major support that you really don't want to see taken out. If it takes out 1400, then that's just a big double top, and it's going to look negative. We'll see a pretty steep pullback on the weekly in that case. Same thing with the dailies. My general rule of thumb is I'm looking for pullbacks to either the 10 EMA on the weekly from a big picture perspective, or the 22, and generally somewhere in between that. And so let's say we do see a sharp pullback, the 22 EMA is right around that 1200. By the time price pulled back to there, it likely would be higher. So like your first line of the sand again is 1300, 1400. So that's really where you want to see it kind of bottom out if we do start to see a steeper pullback. And then it would probably go sideways and do an ascending base from there. You got to remember the last bull run, after ETH had its first real big breakout, and it's going to be hilarious, the prices we're talking about here, but when it had its first big breakout during the last run, it started to consolidate around that $50 mark, right? And it formed a similar structure where it was just kind of this ascending base, and then it finally broke out. And that was, you know, that was a good 4 or 5 weeks, but it was a very strong setup, and it was a clear setup that as soon as it went over 50, it was on a run, and that's pretty much what it did here. But that was because it was really extended away from the moving averages and needed time to just let the moving averages catch up. This scenario, you know, we've kind of already had that, let me get there. We've already had that little bit of a first pullback. Moving averages are much closer, so still leaning in favor of a little bit of a cup and handle scenario here, but needs to start seeing it move out of range here in the next day or two. Getting over 1900, and it's probably off to the races in that scenario. I'd be looking for about 2500 as my next upside target. If I look at ETH from the Bitcoin perspective, it's not playing out just yet, but potentially the makings of a little double bottom here. And so that's what I'm looking for. It's right at support. I'd like to see it hold, or I'd like to see that big wick that takes out the stops and then gets going. The traditional shakeout, fake out, breakouts, which we all love. Either way, keep an eye on this support level because I think it's potentially forming a double bottom. The way I'm playing it right now is I'm still going to stay predominantly BTC from the trading side, but I've got some buy stop orders to flip into ETH if it starts to take out some of these levels, because I think if it does, it'll be quick, and then you'll see a quick rally to the upside, and I expect ETH to really outperform Bitcoin in that scenario. First target would basically be this guy here, and then the double bottom target, which kind of puts it closer to up here. So you can get a good 25 to 40% outperformance of ETH versus BTC. On the US dollar pair, that basically puts you right around that $2,500 mark. So they kind of align. So be watching out for that. But I'm not going to front run that scenario. I'm going to wait for it to play out and then get me in. Otherwise, I'm just going to watch this support, see how things play out. But if Ethereum does start to rally and start to outperform and the alts go on a little party, I'm going to be looking at some of the DeFi names as a way to outperform Ethereum, because some of these have been in consolidation mode since topping in early February, right? So you look at names like Aave that had a monster run at the start of the year. It started in December, but had a little bit of a consolidation right around this $90 mark. And then after it broke out from there, I mean, it was just off to the races, basically went to almost 600 at that point. Started to really pull back, and has just been in this pullback mode since. But I'm keeping an eye on this because it's been enough time. It's given it time to start to flush out some consolidation. But same scenario, just like ETH, it could just as easily pop to the downside and have a little shakeout. So I'm not going to front run this, but I'm watching this trend line. Prices start to take to the upside, or if I see some big volume come in and it starts to push higher, then that's going to be my signal. Not all of them look this way, but comp is similar, right? It's right at support now. Again, could just have a quick shakeout as well, so I'm not going to front run it, but I'm definitely watching the upper resistance trend line. Some of the other names have been much stronger, right? You got things like Balancer that's just been pushing higher. I've been watching Curve here, liking this little consolidation, watching for a potential breakout over that $2.70 mark or so. But a lot of the DeFi names are basically in consolidation mode since February, while the NFT names have had their day in the sun and having their parties. A lot of these names are starting to pause and potentially set up for a move higher. So that's what I'm keeping an eye out for right now, as I'm watching these. If Ethereum starts to push higher, how are the DeFi names going to react? There's a lot of fundamental changes coming into the purview here that could also be a boon to the DeFi names, right? With the Ethereum scaling and kind of addressing the whole scaling, congestion, gas fee issues. So if we start to see a lot of those things really play out and the market start to see some resolution there, then that could also add to the momentum to the upside on those. So that's what I'm watching on those guys there. Some other names here. Let's look at the trending versus BTC. Theta has been on a tear for quite some time. I see that in the comments. We'll take a look at that. A lot of these, I'm just so hesitant to jump on the names that have already had the big moves. Speaking of big moves, we'll go look at some of the ETF names, things like Engine and Mana and Sand and all that good stuff. It's been fun. Many of you guys know I've been on the Mana train for a long time, mostly because it's a project I really thought was cool, and NFTs have just been ripe. It's a good timing. So yeah, Mana has been good to me this last couple of months. But full disclosure, I did sell some land. I mean, the prices people were paying for some of the land, I'm like, it's hard not to. It's hard not to take some profit on the lands. So had to. Let's go through that. So let me see here. What are some of the names you guys want to look at here? I'm going to pull up Theta, Engine, Mana. Atom has been on a nice little move here lately. Look at Link. I'll just pull up a few there. Oh, Polka Dot was the other one I wanted to cover, and Cardano. So let's go through those here quickly. I'll try to keep the stream short today. Looking at Cardano, never going down ever again, right? Cardano. It's amazing, all the smart contracts they're able to do, and all the dApps that run on Cardano, and the amazing infrastructure and ecosystem they have, and all the Cardano devs. I'm being sarcastic, but nonetheless, it's been on a tear. It's actually consolidating here. We had the Coinbase listing pump and then subsequent pullback. It feels like it's needing a little bit more time to breathe, but I can't argue against, the fact that it's starting to consolidate here a little bit. So, this support around $1 is definitely what you want to watch. On the downside, if it doesn't hold, then probably looking for a much steeper pullback, but the trend is your friend, no doubt. The weekly chart, though, yeah, it's extended. So it just depends on your time frame. It's just hard. Like when I see a name like that, unless I see a little bit longer consolidation, it's hard to jump on it, right? Like 16 cents was basically your entry this year. This secondary pullback here around 40 cents or so, that was a nice pullback here, potentially breaking out over $1.30. If it starts to hold above that, is your next leg up. But it's had a good run. Some would argue it's overvalued, but I'll let you make that decision there. Polka Dots, the other Ethereum contender killer, the long line of Ethereum killers. But, this one's a little bit of a different take, right, with the interoperability and all that good stuff. I'm watching this one for sure. I like the setup here from a technical perspective, right? Just this consolidation, clear resistance around that $39 mark, maybe a little bit earlier if you want to call it 38 and change. The downside, it's kind of hard to say. I was thinking like this was the downside. It kind of cracked below. You could easily say it's still in play. At the end of the day, I'm watching the upside here. It's still holding support, so it's in play. Right now, that $31 mark or 32 is really, don't want to see it closing below that. If it does, it really starts to invalidate some of this setup. But breaking over that $38, $39 mark, I see a quick run to near 50, 48, 49 or so. And so I'd be watching this one. Again, their parachains and all that good stuff are being auctioned, and they're going to be launching, so you could see some hype around that and some of the related tokens, in the Polka Dot ecosystem. So keep an eye on this one. Should be interesting. Kusama is another one of those. I think it was on the trending list here. Yeah, so Kusama, again, it's been on a tear for quite some time, but I'd be watching some of those. Curve is a DeFi name that I was watching that was potentially going to switch over to Polka Dot, so that's why I was looking at that one there. What are some of the other names? Theta. Looking at the Theta. Let's look at the Theta Tether pair. Has been on a tear. Very nice. Your last big setup on Theta was back here, of course. Look how beautiful that looked. Very clean. Breakout over 240. Off to the races. Had a little bit of a pullback during the last big Bitcoin consolidation, but man, oh man, has been a nice move. It's not consolidating right now. Just had a little bit of a mini pause around $6-7. Looks like it's going again. The momentum is definitely there on this name. Man, I remember looking at Theta back in the day when it was like cents, and it was a big mover back in here, and here we go, $8 Theta. That's amazing. Beautiful if you're riding that. Engine, I think it's finally pausing, finally due for a break after a monster run. Engine went basically from, what was it, 13 cents to $2.58 on the back of the NFT hypes. Although I really like this project though. Engine's doing some really cool things. They're doing it right with the gaming thing, so definitely worth noting, but hasn't really given you much of a second chance after this breakout over 64 cents. After that, it was like you get these little pullbacks along the way that last 1 or 2 days, but it's pretty much just been on a move. Finally pausing here a little bit. I've noticed volume on this most latest leg up has been a little bit on the lighter side compared to the first breakout days. Still high volume. The name's definitely in play right now. Let's zoom in a little bit. Look at the 4-hour chart. Yeah, it's just consolidating. You could argue maybe a little bit of a symmetrical kind of bull pennant type of thing going here. That would be one scenario. If you're looking at the next level of support, this call it 225-ish is probably your level to be watching, and then below that, $1.90. Personally, if I wanted it, I'd be looking for a pullback or a shakeout into some of these next levels down. On the weekly chart, where's that at? Yeah, I mean, look at the 10 EMA on the weekly is way down here at $1.20. Like, holy moly. Extended. No doubt it's extended. It's just hard to take a longer term entry into something like that at this point. Chili's. Yeah, we'll look at Chili's there. Let me see here. What was next on the list? Mana. Decentraland. Of course, has been on a nice little tear lately. Where can we look at Mana? Huobi tend to has the better. Let's go see what it looks like on Binance. Is fine. Finally pausing here a little bit. Had that spike yesterday with a lot of the other names, due to grayscale, and people think there's going to be this trust that's going to scoop up all the mana in the world. But there's a lot of names on the grayscale, so I don't put as much weight to that kind of stuff as I do some of the other fundamental changes to the project and that sort of thing. But same thing, right? Like with DeFi NFTs that run on the Ethereum blockchain, that sort of thing. Like once they start to scale in layer 2 scaling solutions, and there's other things, it's going to just really be a boost to some of these ecosystems. But man, what a nice move it's had. Again, in consolidation mode here near the highs. I'm keeping an eye on it to see how deep the pullback goes. We had a pretty good shakeout here to 80 cents. Maybe that was it, and it just consolidates above that point. If it doesn't, then the next big level to watch is that 60-cent mark for Mana. If it got that low, personally, I probably would I might add to the mana there at that point. Right now, again, I'm not. I did sell some land here. I think when I sold my land, my average price was, I think, a 97-cent mana, so it was good. It wasn't too shabby, but yeah, we'll see. What's the other one? We could look at sand here real quick. Looking at sand, I mean, a lot of these names have just been tracking together. Pretty much the same story. I think they're a little bit overcooked now. But hey, what do I know? I've been saying that about some of these for a while. Flow is pulling back. Look a little bit more steep here in the last week. It's right at the 22 EMA. So that may be where you want to keep an eye on it there if it pauses. If not, what's that? 29 to 23 is your next major zone to be watching there on flow. All right, let's see what else we got going on here. We covered those. We covered that. Let's do Atom. Cosmos. So this one looks really good, by the way. I like this guy right now. I'm already holding some, so I'm probably not going to add to it here, but I like this. It's kind of edging out. It had a very nice consolidation right around that 18 buck mark. It's after a pretty strong rally here at the start of the year. You had a nice breakout, took it to a 25. Like most of these names, quick pullbacks, but found its grounding, balanced out. Looks like it's starting to run again. So I can definitely see this guy taking out the highs. I know they launched here recently, so it's got some good things going for it. This is kind of in that same space as Polka Dot with the interoperability in the blockchain network and all that good stuff. The thing with a lot of these tokens, though, you know, like with Ethereum, you can see the value with the utility and having to buy ETH to transact with other ecosystems within the block. And a lot of these, like with Atom and Polka Dot, they're more like governance tokens. So like from a longer term perspective, I wonder about the value, right, behind some of these names. But for now, there's a lot of hype. Bull market strong. I have no qualms with this guy. Algo is another one that has been doing pretty good. Again, sitting tight, consolidating. I don't know what all of these other lines are on my chart for. What the heck was I thinking that day? What are all these lines? Must have been from my last live stream. But Algo's looking pretty interesting here too as well, holding up. Let's see here. What else? I think that was it on my list. Link was probably the last one I was going to cover here. And then we'll go to some of your names and try to wrap it up before it gets too long of a stream here. Link breaking out over 32 bucks. I think you quickly can get to 40 on that guy. It'll take out that 36 in no time. But for now, it's consolidation mode. That's what I'd be watching on this guy. And on the downside, you got a pretty interesting little setup here going. How's it look on the BTC pair? Like BTC. Yeah. Looking ugly. Looking ugly after that big run. Been in consolidation mode. Not too pretty. Like a lot of the DeFi names, right? They kind of have that. Alright, Chili's. What is this? NFTs, sporting teams, something along those lines. It's hard to keep up with all these projects, but holy macro. I remember when this one came out way back in the day, I was like, scam coin, another scam token. But man, look at it. Look at it go. Very nice. This is actually a pretty good consolidation here. Secondary pause, probably the first big pause. I mean, you had a little bit of a pause here, but this is probably the first decent one after that monster run. I don't even know what the market cap of this guy is, but yeah, over 75 cents. If it starts to break that, which it's looking like it wants to, might finally have that next leg up. How high it goes is anyone's guess. That weekly chart is just some of these names are just unreal. The last couple of weeks have just been crazy for the whole space, man. It's just nuts. Enjoy it. Enjoy while it lasts. We're all geniuses in this bull market. Everyone's a genius. All right. What was the other names here? Let me go through some of the comments, and I'll do a few more. Looks like I covered that one. Theta. Let me go back to Theta real quick. What's theta on the BTC side look? Yeah, nice breakout on theta BTC here. Just like, what was that, today? Yesterday? Little pop above that. Sometimes you get a throwback, so something worth watching here. You might get a little throwback entry and then it gets going again. I'll be watching that. We covered Cardano, we covered Dots, we covered... I haven't looked at Dash in forever. Maybe I'll take a look at Dash. Let's do some Ren. Tezos, yeah, I'll do those and then we'll probably wrap it up. So I'll do Tezos, Dash, Ren. Cool. Alright. XTZ. So I'm going to do this on the Kraken here. On the Kraken, the low volume Kraken. You know what? I'm not going to do it on the Kraken. What do I have it on over here? I've got it on my list somewhere. Binance. Yeah, this one's been a weird one. This one's been choppy. I was watching this one, you know, at the start of the year back here where it was that $3. Finally broke out, but man, what a shakeout this guy had right back to the breakout point. I mean, it was even below the breakout point. I would argue that would be it. But yeah, it came right back to that 325. Has just been so choppy as of late. Haven't followed the project closely enough to know much about the fundamentals or what's driving it, but yeah, I mean, the broader thing is the dips to the trend line are probably the more ideal scenario, right? So like it's basically there right now. These pullbacks, breaking out over that 450 mark is probably your next resistance level, and then at that point you probably see a quick run to the highs, maybe new all-time highs at that point. But yeah, this is a tough one. Like on a percentage basis, those are some big moves, right? Like this is 40% move here. This right here is a 18%. So maybe it's a good trading name. It's a tough ride. EOS, yeah, I've noticed that with Kraken on the volume, it's been a lot better as of late, and I think just the whole industry with a lot of new folks coming in, especially in the U.S. with like CFTC and other places cracking down on using other exchanges that are not U.S. approved. You get more people kind of just going to Kraken and Coinbase and that sort of thing. I mean, at least they've got margin and all that, so there are some pros there. Their UI is just not the best. I mean, I think the mobile app is better than the UI. It's just that's how bad it is. Let's see here. Oh, Laramir is back. I didn't know that. I haven't followed EOS ever since they scammed everybody out of all your money and bought Bitcoin with it. First they bought ETH with it, and they were dumping ETH on the market. Then they bought Bitcoin. But yeah, EOS, man, who knows about this one? I just stopped following the project. Didn't like any of the leadership on there. I know it had some promises, but the challenge with a lot of these is like the longer it takes for the ecosystems to build out, the stronger the leading names get or the competition shows up, right? So there's a lot of competition right now. But yeah, it's looking interesting here. It looked like it had that little throwback down to, what is this, 350? That's a pretty interesting little shakeout. So that's kind of your first major support. I wouldn't be against it here with kind of that 350 mark. It looks like it's starting to edge higher, but yeah, 540 is definitely your next big major stop. That lines up well with this prior top. So hey, maybe you finally get that breakout. Usually third time's the charm there. So rallied up. If it can test 540 again, maybe it finally does it. Finally pushes higher. If it does that, then yeah, you're looking at $7-8 as your next big target. So hey, that's a double from here. It's not too shabby. Dash. Not looked at Dash in a while. Not DoorDash. They just went public recently. Oh, Dash. Hey, Dash. Dash sitting tight right above $200 on the support side. So yeah, that's definitely your level to watch there. Below that, then you probably get back to 150 pretty quick. Yeah, Dash. I mean, I see them marketing a lot. I know they're trying to be kind of the payments thing. Here's my thing with Dash, right? Like, I don't know if crypto needs that many payment tokens, you know, just for purely transactional purposes. I think in the early days, right, when cryptocurrency was first coming on the scene, you know, that was the argument against Bitcoin. And then there was these other payment net kind of tokens, right? Litecoin and then Zcash and Dash and, you know, then there was the obscure, like, we're the payment token for XYZ, like the dental industry and stupid things like that. You know, and we've since evolved from that to platforms, and now we're like on the next generation of that, right? Where people just expect more out of the token, right? Like smart contract and multiple blockchain interoperability and, you know, free transactions and like just that's just the momentum we're going. So like Dash really had some good vision, and they were gonna like make it very easy, and you didn't have to use wallet addresses, and it was just like all friendly, kind of like a DNS service, but just never really materialized. And I know they're still working on it, and they're doing all that, but I don't know. It's hard for me to get behind Dash, but you can't argue with the price. Like everything else, it's been on a tear. Like it's been hard to be wrong this year. Like this, I don't know where you could have been wrong besides like maybe Bitcoin Cash or something. Like it's been hard to be wrong this year, and even names like Dash have doubled and tripled here in no time. So yeah, interesting here, but yeah, I wouldn't argue against it here. But breaking out over that 250, you probably get a quick run back up to that 340 mark. Let's see here. Saya Coin, there's a name from yesteryear. I don't know. Like I really don't have an opinion on them anymore. I used to follow them way back in the day when they first started. Like I think with the whole NFT craze, when you look at interplanetary file system needs, that whole thing, right? Filecoin, Saya Coin, like I can see these names pivoting to that and really capitalizing on that. I mean, that's been the reason Filecoin has rallied so much. You know, I think there's good potential if they support, you know, that new movement, the new markets with the NFTs and all that good stuff. Yeah, covered Cardano, Flow. Let's see here. Ren, I think, was the last one we were going to look at. Let's go Ren USD. Ren was on a nice tear for a while, finally pausing. Look at that, hit $1.80. After breaking out the last, you know, the December breakout here, 40-50 cents was the last push, and then just kind of was straight up. You see that kind of climactic push, finally taking a breather here. Ren above 95 cents is probably your solid support in around there. Looks good here. It looks like it's consolidating. Same general scenario with like the DeFi space, right? If things start to push higher, I can see if ETH starts to push higher and Bitcoin consolidates, I can see it kind of doing something similar to that. $1.35-ish, probably the breakout point for Ren near term. And then, yeah, I'm thinking new highs if we can push that, but it looks good. Let's see here. I'm going to try to cycle through these real quick. I think I'm over my target time limit. You know, I was watching Lumen not too long ago because I was thinking, man, this looks pretty good, but it's just continuing to flatten out. I was thinking back here that this was the breakout point, and then it just never did. But yeah, I wouldn't argue with this one. A lot of these names from yesteryear kind of have their day when everything else has rallied and things are pausing. Then you get these names kind of have their turn. What's XRP doing these days? That's basically, look at where that thing's going. Like breakout point, pulled back. It's a nice little base. 35 cents is basically your line in the sand there, but holding up so far. Looks all right. Wouldn't argue against this setup. That's the thing, right? Like I like to look at those names that are pausing, that are not on the radar. It's really hard to start chasing the pumps. You want to look at these names before the pump. Have your plan in place. Icon. I don't know what's going on with Icon. It kept hitting my radar for some reason. I'm like, what is going on with Icon? But man, can't argue with this setup. I wouldn't, if it were me, like I wouldn't wait for the 230 to be taken out. I like to get them in when they take out early resistance. So like $2 is basically the level. breaking out over that $2. Holding over $2 is probably your level to watch. A nice little ascending triangle base here with, you know, your first support being right at 170 or so. But yeah, icon. The bull market comes and gets them all eventually, right? All right. Yeah, Balancer has been good. Surprisingly good. Like, all my DeFi names have been pausing, and I'm like, what the heck's up with this guy? This guy's just rallying. Which, fine. Fine, I'm not going to complain. Same with 0x. 0x had a nice little move. I was watching 0x because I liked the setup a couple days back. Had that spike today, kind of gave it all back up, but it's still there. Like, the setup's still there. You know, it was support right here around $1.50, pulled back, finally broke higher. It's been trying to get back over that mark, but I'm watching it. I'm thinking it will. It's had its time to consolidate. It's off of people's radars again. This is what I was talking about, right? Like, you had that first big spike. This is your first decent consolidation on the weekly chart. This is when I start looking at those names. So 0x is definitely one I am liking here. We looked at most of the other DeFi names for now. We looked at Aave. I think the story with Aave, with Comp, this is the time to pay attention to them, but I'm not going to front run them per se until they take out some of this downtrend resistance. But my thesis is that if ETH can break out, those guys are going to outperform on the upside. And so that's what I'm looking for. But gotta wait for ETH to break out. Come on, ETH, break out. I'd like to see it take out 18, let's call it 1880, 1885. If it does that, you'll get a quick run to 1950, and then it's new highs, and then it's 2500. Those are my targets. But gotta wait for it to break out. All right. I'll call it a stream. We'll call it a stream. We'll end it there. I appreciate you guys joining on this last minute stream. It's been a while. I thought about streaming earlier in the week. It's just one of those, like, when I look at the charts, I'm like, oh man, today would be a good day for a stream. But then when I think of that, it's like 11 p.m. my time on Saturday or Sunday, and I'm already lazy and watching something, and I'm like, I'll do it tomorrow, and you know how that goes. Then tomorrow becomes next week. But yeah, I appreciate you guys joining. It was cool to hang with you guys again. Air Crypto in the house. We got a few folks checking in, so yeah, thanks for joining, and appreciate the comments. I hope you guys are doing well. Remember, stay disciplined, stay informed, and stay healthy. Take care, everyone. Talk to you.